travels around, but he's incredible, not only doctor, but friend. He's an MD. Maybe he could tell us a little bit about himself. Dr. Leland Stillman, thanks for joining us tonight.
Good evening. Great to see you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Great to see you too.
And you know what? Maybe tell them a little bit where you're from and what kind of practice you have, so they can kind of get to know you. That everybody wants to. They're all asking me, what kind of doctor is he? I said, well, he'll explain.
They're so excited you're on.
So I practice integrative and functional medicine. I've been interested in phototherapy, light therapy, things like LifeWave for, now it's got to be 7 or 8 years now. I've been in practice for 10. I've run my own practice for 3. For the most part, we take care of sick people who are getting sicker and are tired of settling for being sick and want to get back to the best state of health possible and be the best version of themselves that they can be, which of course makes the X39 LifeWave product a logical fit for what we do. We offer them in our executive physicals as part of the package. And, we started to do that because I knew we would get the testimonials from it that I was expecting. I know you guys asked me to come ready with testimonials, and that's one of the ones I've gotten in the last, I would say, I actually got this testimonial in December, but I just followed up with her again this past week. And so it was fresh in my memory, and I finally wrote it up for my blog. If people want to keep up with me, yes. The place is stillmanmd.substack.com, and I'll drop a link to this testimonial. Oh no, you know what? I'm actually going to give you guys a sneak peek. This is my test. This is my post for tomorrow. So I'll share with you these 2 testimonials. This testimonial was this woman. She'd fallen, broken her elbow. Her nerve had become entrapped so that she couldn't use her arm. Basically at all. And she lingered like this for a month and a half, no improvement, not able to use her right hand, her dominant hand. And then she put the X39 patch on, and 10 days later, she had 40% of her function back. And now it's almost completely back to normal. And she's concerned that she wouldn't have had any improvement if she hadn't used the patches. And that's the kind of testimonial that I'm getting now in my practice from these patches. So, Steve, Gina.
This is just incredible to have you. Let me ask you something. You mentioned LifeWave and X39 and phototherapy kind of like you knew it, but when Renita was the one that reached out to you, was this the first time you heard of the X39? I mean, when you first heard
yes.
of it?
Yes.
So how many months ago did she reach out to you about?
Renita started blowing up my phone it must have been a year ago. Because she had to work on me for 3 or 4 or 5 months before I really took this seriously, because I thought I had not heard good things about network marketing or MLMs. I had mentors and friends tell me never get involved with one of those things. And so I was hesitant, but then Renita kept showing me these testimonials. I know Renita. I don't know her that well, but I knew her well enough to think there's something here. And part of it was actually that because I made such a name for myself talking about light on social media, my blog, and so on and so forth, I knew that if I was late to the party on a really good type of phototherapy, I would look like a complete idiot. So I just said, okay, all right, I guess I have to buy these and try them out. And so I started to recommend them through my blog. I would say pretty conservatively at first, and people started to fill out the testimonials that I started to collect testimonials through all my posts. There's usually a link to this survey in my posts because I want to keep my finger on the pulse of what people are actually seeing.
Yeah. And
I started to get these testimonials, and so I started recommending more, and then I started to get more testimonials, and I started recommending more, and then just on and on and on. And that was how Renita convinced me to not just dip my pinky in the water, but to really dive in and recommend it more broadly.
So that's about, say, 8-9 months ago that you kind of took it a little more serious. At first, it was all kind of, which is interesting because here's somebody who really understands the way this technology works. I had no clue how the technology works. I've learned it all through since I heard about the X39 and through doctors like Dr. Stillman, who I've interviewed and met, and he's kind of got us up to speed. As a matter of fact, my son-in-law is our videographer, as you know. He was with us when we did your interview for This Is It convention, and he's young. And he said, after we did our interview, he said that was the most understandable way of how this technology works. I have heard out of all the people you've talked to, because he's followed Gina and myself around for 19 months, and he was blown away by exactly what, and now him and my daughter are just so zoned in on focused on building their X39 and Lifeway business because of what you shared with them, which is really a blessing. And he's already a very successful photographer and everything, but nobody wants to pass up what this possibly could do for them. So thank you so much. But I also thank you for making it so simple for us to understand. But I'm very interested here tonight that you said you've studied this technology and you just kind of recently heard about it through Anita about a year ago. Then it took you little challenges, which is great because I want a doctor to be skeptical, not cynical, but a bit skeptical. And, you know, most of you that are on here tonight, if you are a little skeptical, we don't mind that. It's actually, you know, the most people that have that little skepticism are the ones that really champion the cause once they see it. You know, it's the person that really jumps in. You're like, wait a minute, you don't want to even check it out or take a little time to do a little research. So I get a little leery. I'd rather have with the way the story came. But that really is interesting because here you knew about this kind of technology and then you didn't hear about it. I have not had anybody heard about this. Now, again, I've had 14 surgeries, a lot of physical therapy. So people might have said they knew about Lifeway, but nobody taking it serious and understanding exactly what it is, kind of just like it's there on the shelf or they heard about it from somebody. So thanks for sharing on that. Can you give us some more of an idea of how this technology and this little device works and how people can really understand it is best from an MD?
Sure. So your body produces light inside of its cells. It does this in specifically a little part of the cell called the mitochondria. These are nicknamed the powerhouses of the cell because that's literally what they are. Most people think that their body produces energy by burning carbohydrates, just like your car produces, you know, energy by burning gasoline. That's sort of true, but the reality is that the energy actually comes from the liberation of light from food. So just like, you know, when your car is burning gasoline, there's a little explosion, right? And if you had that gasoline outside the car and you let it on fire, it would be bright. You would see light. Those are photons, right? Visually, you see light as camera vision, right? I see Steve and Gina. I see all these people's names on a screen, right? That's the visible spectrum of light. These patches deal with the infrared spectrum of light. They reflect a very specific frequency of light in the infrared range back into the body. And, you know, I was very skeptical of this in part because it seemed like a really tall order for a patch like this to reflect a very specific frequency back into the body to do this. I would have thought that I could have gotten the same results with sunlight, a therapeutic lamp or light phototherapy device. Many of these things are out there, but I have used a lot of those devices and I have not been able to, I'll give you a great example. One of the most compelling testimonials I've ever gotten came in recently. It was a woman who suffered you know what, I actually have it up here. I'm going to just go ahead and read it. Yeah, so, she had a very significant scar in her abdomen that is 2 to 3 inches below her belly button and went hip to hip. She actually talked to me yesterday about this, and it wasn't just hip to hip. It actually extended around her flank, all the way all around to her back. And I got confused by her description that she typed because it makes it sound like it's a visible scar. This was scar tissue that was deep inside the body, and she described it as being like a rope, like the size of her pinky finger. It was caused by a horse kicked her with both feet from only a couple feet behind her, and she got slammed into a barn wall. So she took all the power of that kick, and that generated that scar tissue. That was 3 years ago. She had tried all kinds of things to decrease it, from massage to proteolytic enzymes to. She doesn't mention light therapy here, but the funny thing is that she works for a group that teaches about light therapy. So I'm sure she's tried it. If she hasn't, I'd be shocked. But anyway, finally, she started the X39 patches 12 days ago, and it's 75% gone. She can't find remnants when she searches deeply. And she thought at first it started decreasing after the first day, and she thought she was crazy. But then she's seen that, and when I talked to her, I think a couple of days after she submitted this, she said it was completely gone. So I've never seen that. I recommend people do sauna. People buy therapeutic lights through my friends who are distributors all the time. I don't get testimonials like this. I don't have patients coming back telling me about stories like this. The elbow pain story is another one. I mean, I got a testimonial a few weeks ago, a lady who grew her eyebrows back. There are things I do that are where we get great results. We get results like this, but I don't have anything that I do that's this just plug and play. Give everyone this patch. Maybe they'll get this amazing outcome. Everything else has to be tailored to them. So that was what got my attention. And these are things that, for the skeptics out there who are wondering, well, what about the placebo effect? In the integrative world, we work with the placebo effect all the time because everything that we do is sort of enrolling the patient to work on getting well. And that induces the placebo effect.
Yeah.
Somebody just getting on a Zoom call with me has some placebo effect. And I have seen a lot of people get better and respond to placebos. I've never seen anybody do this stuff with placebos.
Yeah.
So, placebo complicates everything that we do, and that's okay. But this is very different.
Yeah.
I think
so
that
all
was
we
kind
gotta
of
say is,
rambling.
woo, X39. Yeah.
No, that's incredible. The stuff you're saying now, again, I mean, I have this question for you, but it's kind of like after you just mentioned that, why even ask the question, but let them have it. All right. From a doctor, from what you've seen, why should you highly recommend, why do you highly recommend this device for every single person, the X39 that's out there? Why would you recommend it? Even if they see maybe they're not getting a result, like that could be something like tell them what's going on in their body with what is happening with this
Right.
this X39.
So the light being reflected back into the body by the patch is upregulating the production of something called GHK-Cu, copper peptide. We're just going to call that copper peptide. It's a lot easier. In reality, there's lots of these peptides. Peptides are small proteins. And I want you to think about peptides and proteins as being like the machinery that gets the work of life done. You have a toaster oven, you have a blender, you have a microwave oven, you have a number of tools in your kitchen. You put them together to make food, right? Your body's not any different. It just uses proteins and peptides to get it done. So one of the big problems people today face, and I have a lot of content on about this because I am really passionate about it. We are actually in the midst of an epidemic of people having too much copper, but copper is a little bit like a loaded gun. There's nothing wrong with a loaded gun. You just need to have it pointed in the right direction, right? And you need to be very comfortable that what you're pointing it at could be obliterated, right? So that's a really important concept for people to get, because what's happening in our modern world is that copper is getting unbound and it's working out of control. And when it does that, it creates what we call oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is synonymous with aging when it's present in excess. So if you look at the literature on heart disease, if you look at the literature on dementia, if you look at the literature on every kind of degenerative illness that we're dealing with today, they're linked back to excess copper in the body that's not bound to peptides and proteins. And I give you that long explanation because it's really important for people to not come away from this thinking copper bad. I didn't say that. Yeah. Unbound free copper is like a big liability. It can create what I like to call metabolic mayhem. And this peptide, GHK-Cu, binds copper. What does it do once it's bound copper? It gets to work. And it's one of our primary or most important and most powerful biomolecules or responses to stress, injury, decay. And what it does is essentially runs around the body, turning on the processes of rejuvenation and healing, which is why we get, and this is, I think, one of the things that people, it's tough to wrap your mind around, right? Most of you are used to thinking, I feel nausea, I take this. I feel headache, I take aspirin. I feel knee pain, I take Tylenol. And one of the spooky things about the patches and the things that's kind of tough to wrap your mind around is, well, this seems like it's good for everything. That sounds too good to be true. There must be some kind of catch. What is it actually for? I'm waiting for you to tell me. No, it's really just for joint pain. It's not, okay? Because copper has this effect all over the body. There's copper in your joints. There's copper in your gut. There's copper in your brain. There's copper in your skin. There's copper in your kidneys, liver, heart. It's everywhere, right? Why is it everywhere, by the way? It actually is essential for your body to create energy, right? Which is why if there's one thing that people will tell me about the LifeWave patches that's most consistent, it's that their energy is better, right? And so that's what's happening on a molecular level. Now, to be more specific, the peptide will reset genes in your body to a more youthful state. This is one reason why I recently got this question from someone. They asked if this would potentially, because it turns on stem cells, right? And for those of you who don't know, stem cells, cancer comes from stem cells that have gone rogue. And they've asked me, do you think this could create a problem with reactivating cancers? I have friends who don't want to try it because they're worried about that. Well, we know very, very well from the photobiomodulation literature, the light therapy literature, that exposing people to red and infrared light does not make cancer worse. If anything, it helps these rogue cells and stem cells get back on track and be more what they're supposed to be. Now, we still don't know exactly how well it may be used to treat cancer, but, give them 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years, they'll figure it out. In the meantime, this works really well, and no, it won't upregulate or cause an increased risk of cancer. It only...
Boom! Yes!
Yeah, right. It only causes the body to go back more into this youthful state. And it's, people have probably never heard this before, but there really is an epidemic today of excess copper. It's largely being driven by the fact that there's 270,000 metric tons of copper sulfate being sprayed on our food. And that's something like 60 milligrams for every person in the world per day. And yes, much of that washes off the food, but it also concentrates in the soil. And a lot of this, by the way, if you're on here and you're thinking, well, I don't really need to worry about that, I eat organic. Turns out copper sulfate's used more in the organic industry because it's organic. It's approved organic by the USDA. So we see copper toxicity all the time. The more copper toxic somebody is, the more confident I am that LifeWave is going to help them. And yeah.
Wow. That is absolutely incredible. We get that question all the time. Will it activate more cancer cells? I'm like, thank you for clarifying that, because it's a struggle, and I'm not in their shoes, but I can understand their deep concern, because why would you want it to spread more and feed more? Sure. So that's amazing.
And for what you're telling us that this device, the X39, can do, the cost compared to anything else you have to do. For me to go to one hyperbaric chamber, visit is, almost up close to $1,000. So for $99 for a month's supply, can you address that? It can't get any easier.
Let's talk about it, yeah.
Over your overall health.
Yeah.
You can't do anything easier.
So I had this conversation with a patient, what was it, yesterday, maybe the day before? And he asked me, essentially said, look, I'm in upstate New York, because this is another thing that I share with people, right? So I don't think it's a coincidence that Renita Brannon, who enrolled me, is one of the most successful people in the company. Not only is she an absolutely lovable firecracker person.
Absolutely, yeah.
And she, it's like she could make conversation with, trees and rocks, right? But she lives in North Dakota, the coldest, darkest place in the lower 48, except maybe northern Minnesota or, the Pacific Northwest. You got to understand, infrared light is 42% of sunlight. I'd be really curious, Steve and Gene, if you go back to the data from the company on where you guys do your best sales, I wouldn't be surprised if your best sales if your sales actually increase with latitude. So the colder it gets, the less infrared light there is around. And these people, I feel bad for them. You guys don't know this because you don't see it, but I measure these things. So there's an incredible amount of infrared light coming from the sun in places that are warm enough to say, take your clothes off and wear a bathing suit. Tons of infrared light. But if you're indoors in Minnesota, North Dakota, whatever, in January, you are absorbing almost no infrared light. Almost none. And that's very unusual. I mean, in the history of the world, people have never tried to live in cold places without infrared light. Yes, you live in a climate controlled environment, but if you've ever lived in a cold place, you know there's a big difference between living in a heated house and getting into a sauna or warming yourself by a campfire. You know, telling me that your HVAC system provides you the same comfort as a sauna or a nice fire is laughable. These are very different things. And it's because of the photons, the light coming out of the fire. So cold places, dark places where people don't get enough light, I really believe these patches are going to go further and be more attractive and have better results. For those of you who care to know that. And I think I've gotten off topic. What did you ask me?
That was it. We were just talking about the price. I mean, everything you're saying for $99. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So this guy was in upstate New York and he said, look, should I go ahead and try the LifeWave patches? I said, look, you're young, you're smart. You could easily take this thing to the moon. And, you know, I know you're young. I know you don't have all the money in the world. You could turn this into the thing that allows you to afford the other things you want in order to be as healthy as you'd like to be.
That's good.
And that makes it, to me, a good idea for him to try it, right?
Yeah.
And as far as the other things that you can go after for this that yield similar results, like you said, you know, hyperbaric oxygen, IV therapies, you know, medical procedures, stem cell procedures, there's no, and, you know, we all know that individual results may vary. It's not like everyone has some kind of out of this world response, and be prepared for that, because people will sometimes send me reviews where they say, well, I didn't see a difference after 60 days, 90 days. And I say, look, you may not have noticed it, right? Like, a lot of healing happens under the surface of the body and you can't easily quantify it. And so, yeah, it's that's another important point for people to understand about these patches.